In the state of New York, not far from the Hudson River, there is a small valley surrounded by hills and forests. This valley is called Sleepy Hollow. The people who live there are kind and hard-working, but they also believe strongly in ghosts and strange happenings. The place itself has a dreamy, peaceful feeling. Travelers who enter the valley say they feel sleepy and quiet, as if the land itself is under a spell. The most famous story told in Sleepy Hollow is about a ghostly rider. Long ago, during the American Revolution, a soldier lost his head to a cannonball in battle. People say his spirit still rides through the valley at night, searching for his missing head. He is known as the Headless Horseman. This ghostly tale is told so often that everyone in Sleepy Hollow believes it is true. Children whisper about it on dark nights, and old women swear they have seen the rider racing across the hills. No one dares to walk alone after dark. This is the place where our story begins quiet, dreamy, and haunted by a legend. Into this strange valley came a schoolteacher from far away, who would soon find himself caught in the middle of the ghostly tale. The schoolteacher's name was Ichabod Crane. He came from Connecticut to teach in Sleepy Hollow. Ichabod was tall and very thin, with long arms and legs that seemed too large for his body. His head was small and flat on top, and his nose was long like a beak. He looked awkward, but he thought of himself as a fine gentleman. Ichabod loved food, and wherever he went, he enjoyed the meals offered by the farmers. He stayed at different houses during the week, moving from family to family, and each home gave him a bed and plenty to eat. In return, he sometimes helped with farm chores or taught singing lessons to the children. Though poor, Ichabod dreamed of becoming rich one day. He admired fine clothes, gold, and especially good food. His eyes sparkled whenever he saw a well-filled table. He often imagined himself enjoying wealth and comfort. But more than anything, Ichabod believed in ghosts. He loved to read scary books and to listen to old women's tales about spirits. At night, when he walked home through the woods, every sound made him jump. The wind in the trees, the hoot of an owl, or the rustle of leaves seemed like ghosts chasing him. Yet, he still enjoyed being frightened and often scared himself on purpose with ghost stories. Among the farmers of Sleepy Hollow, there was one who was very rich. His name was Ichabod Van Tassel, and he lived in a large farmhouse filled with comfort and plenty. He had horses, cows, and fields full of grain. His home was always full of food, pies, cakes, and roasted meats. Baltus had a daughter named Katrina Van Tassel. She was young, beautiful, and full of life. Her eyes sparkled, and her cheeks were rosy. She dressed in fine clothes and wore golden jewelry. Many young men admired her, not only for her beauty, but also for her father's wealth. When Ichabod Crane saw Katrina, he was instantly in love. But more than her beauty, he dreamed of the fortune that might be his if he could marry her. He pictured himself living on the Van Tassel farm, eating at their rich table, and riding their horses. He imagined himself as master of all those fields and animals. Katrina, however, was playful and clever. She liked to be admired and often smiled at Ichabod, but she also had many other suitors. The strongest and boldest of them all was Brom Van Brunt, better known as Brom Bones. Brom was broad-shouldered, powerful, and full of energy. He was a famous horseman and loved by his friends for his sense of humor. He liked to play tricks and never backed down from a fight. Brom Bones was also deeply in love with Katrina and was not pleased by Ichabod's interest in her. Ichabod Crane did everything he could to win Katrina's heart. He walked her home after singing lessons, paid her many compliments, and tried to show himself as a fine gentleman. But Brom Bones was not easy to defeat. He rode up on his powerful horse Daredevil and made fun of Ichabod in front of everyone. Still, Ichabod was clever. He avoided fighting Brom directly. Instead, he tried to spend more time with Katrina, hoping that one day she would choose him over Brom. Meanwhile, Brom Bones played many tricks on Ichabod. Sometimes, Brom and his friends stopped up the school chimney so the children shivered with cold. Other times, they frightened Ichabod at night by making ghostly noises. The people of Sleepy Hollow laughed at Brom's jokes, but Ichabod became more determined. He believed that with patience and charm, he could win Katrina and her fortune. The rivalry between the schoolmaster and the strong horseman grew sharper each day. Everyone in the valley wondered which man Katrina would choose. One autumn afternoon, Ichabod received exciting news. Baltus Van Tassel was giving a grand party at his farmhouse, and everyone in the valley was invited. There would be music, dancing, games, and a feast like no other. Ichabod's heart raced with joy. He hoped that at this party he could finally win Katrina's heart. Ichabod borrowed a horse named Gunpowder from a local farmer. Gunpowder was old and bony, with a tangled mane and a rough gait, but Ichabod rode him proudly. He dressed in his best clothes, brushed his long hair carefully, and set off for the party with dreams of victory. The autumn evening was beautiful. The fields glowed with the golden color of harvest, and the trees were red and yellow. As Ichabod rode toward the Van Tassel farmhouse, he imagined himself as the future master of all that land. At the farmhouse, music played, and the large rooms were full of cheerful guests. The tables bent under the weight of cakes, pies, roasted meats, and drinks. Katrina looked more beautiful than ever in her fine dress. Ichabod's heart beat with excitement. The great hall of the Van Tassel farmhouse was bright with candles and full of laughter. Fiddlers played lively tunes, and young people danced across the floor. Ichabod Crane joined happily, for though his figure was awkward, he danced with great energy. His long arms and legs moved wildly, and he smiled proudly as he led Katrina in the dances. Brom Bones, however, watched closely, not pleased to see Ichabod enjoying himself. After dancing, the guests sat around to eat. Ichabod filled his plate, again and again, enjoying pies, roasted turkey, and sweet cider. His eyes glowed with joy as he imagined himself feasting like this every day if he married Katrina. Later, when the dancing slowed, groups of men gathered to tell stories. The old farmers spoke of battles from the Revolution, of haunted places, and of strange sights seen in the woods. Ichabod listened with delight, especially to tales of ghosts. The most famous story was, of course, about the Headless Horseman. Some swore they had seen the rider galloping at night, his head carried on his saddle. Others said he disappeared in a flash of fire at the bridge near the church. Brom Bones himself told with laughter how he once challenged the ghost to a race. He claimed he nearly outran the Headless Horseman before the spirit vanished. Everyone laughed, but Ichabod shivered at the thought. When the stories ended, Ichabod's mind was full of images of ghosts, shadows, and the dreaded horseman. Yet he still dreamed of Katrina. And before the night was done, he planned to speak with her privately. When the music ended, the guests began to leave. Ichabod, his heart full of hope, found Katrina alone. No one knows exactly what passed between them in that short conversation, but when Ichabod left the farmhouse, he looked crushed and broken. It seems Katrina had played with his feelings. Perhaps she only wanted to make Brom jealous, or perhaps she simply enjoyed teasing Ichabod. Whatever her reason, she dismissed him that night. The schoolmaster's dream of wealth and love collapsed in a moment. With a heavy heart, Ichabod mounted old Gunpowder and began his ride home. The night was dark and silent. The stars shone faintly, and a thin crescent moon hung low. The cheerful lights of the farmhouse disappeared behind him, and the lonely road through the woods stretched ahead. Ichabod was already troubled by Katrina's rejection, and now the ghost stories he had heard returned to his mind. Every shadow seemed alive. Every tree seemed to whisper. He remembered tales of haunted places, the graveyard near the church, the great white ghost horse, and, most of all, the Headless Horseman. The road was narrow and passed through thick woods. The wind rustled the branches, and insects chirped. Ichabod tried to whistle to keep up his courage, but his voice shook. Suddenly, a great toad croaked loudly by the roadside, making him jump. Then an owl hooted mournfully from a tree above, sounding like a spirit's cry. As he crossed a small bridge, the dark water below gurgled as though whispering. Ichabod's heart pounded. Gunpowder plodded slowly, the old horse's head hanging low. Ichabod looked behind him nervously, but saw only shadows. At last, he came to a great tree, famous in Sleepy Hollow as a haunted spot. Here, a soldier was said to have been killed long ago. Ichabod's hands shook on the reins. Just then, he thought he saw a dark figure by the tree. He rubbed his eyes. Was it a shadow, or was someone truly there? As he passed, the figure seemed to move. It was large and mounted on a horse. Ichabod's breath caught in his throat. The figure did not speak. It only rode silently behind him, keeping pace with Gunpowder. Ichabod tried to sing, but his voice died in his mouth. He urged Gunpowder forward, but the old horse stumbled. The dark rider followed close, never speaking, never turning aside. At last, the road came out from the woods, and moonlight fell on the rider. Ichabod looked in terror and saw that the figure had no head upon its shoulders. Instead, a head, or something like one, was carried before him on the saddle. It was the Headless Horseman. Ichabod's heart nearly stopped. He kicked Gunpowder to run, but the old horse suddenly veered off the road through the trees, crashing through fences and bushes. Ichabod clung tightly as branches struck his face. Behind him, the ghostly rider galloped with dreadful speed, never falling behind. Finally, Gunpowder found the road again and raced madly forward. Ichabod remembered the stories. The horseman could not cross the bridge near the old church. If only he could reach that bridge, he might be safe. The night air roared in his ears. His thin body bounced wildly, and he prayed desperately as Gunpowder thundered toward the church bridge. With one last burst of speed, Gunpowder clattered across the wooden bridge. Ichabod looked back in triumph, hoping to see the ghost vanish. But to his horror, the rider did not disappear. Instead, he rose in the saddle and hurled his head at Ichabod. The dark object struck Ichabod with a crash. He tumbled from his horse and fell to the ground. Gunpowder galloped on without his rider, disappearing into the night. The next morning, Gunpowder was found grazing near his master's gate, without saddle or bridle. Ichabod was nowhere to be seen. The only traces were his hat and a shattered pumpkin lying on the road by the church bridge. Some said the Headless Horseman carried him away. Others whispered that Ichabod was so frightened that he fled the valley and never returned. Brom Bones married Katrina not long after, and whenever people spoke of Ichabod, Brom only laughed knowingly. The people of Sleepy Hollow still tell the tale of the schoolmaster and the Headless Horseman. To this day, travelers in the valley feel the strange, dreamy air and remember the ghostly rider who searches endlessly for his lost head. And so ends the story of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Thank you for listening to tonight's sleep story. If your eyes are still open, let them close now. If your thoughts are still awake, let them soften. Until next time, sleep deeply, dream sweetly,